Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings, as we still do have weather warnings for snow and ice issued today, tomorrow and into Sunday, as we are still hanging on to that freezing cold air, but much milder conditions is going to be arriving for all through Sunday evening into Monday, and it's going to sort of be flip-flopping between mild and cold potentially next week, as we'll see on the longer range models. There's going to be very subtle differences between the cold air to our north and the mild air to our south, and that could mean through the Christmas period we could have some really interesting conditions. We could have a pattern where in the south it's 10 degrees, mild and raining. You go a few hundred miles further northwards into Scotland, it's cold and snowy. So I do think over the course of the next week or two we can have really stark contrasts in temperatures over the top of the UK, and again wherever that snow rain line does sit will decide the type of weather we do see over the course of the Christmas period, but it does look likely it will be unsettled. So yes, many people over the Christmas period will be seeing precipitation, most likely in the south in the form of rain, but there's a chance, quite a moderate chance in the north of it falling as snow, potentially even drifting southwards at times as well. But of course, we'll decipher that more in the longer range charts in a minute. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. So we do start on the live radar. You can see it is mostly dry, but we do have this big band of heavy snow pushing to Scotland. We actually saw an amber warning issued here for north of Glasgow into the higher ground of Scotland. Now some of this snow is moving to rain to lower lying areas, as of course this is accompanied by slightly milder air. That's why it's such a heavy area of precipitation, because a slightly milder air giving a bit more in the form of moisture into the air, and those slightly milder conditions are turning it to rain to lower lying areas, but still heavy snow, 10-20 centimetres of fresh snow already on top of 10 to 30 centimetres of snow that we've seen fall over the last week or two. So some areas in Scotland are absolutely buried. Again, most likely over the higher ground, but still a lot of significant snow pushing in here, and it should continue over the course of the afternoon. The amber warning has expired now, but we've still got a yellow warning issued for that, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. Elsewhere, we've still got plenty of showers pushing in. Most of these are snow inland, but they will be turning increasingly to rain or a wintry mix to low-lying areas in the west, especially so parts of Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. The last chance really of any proper snowfall is today. Tomorrow, most of these showers will be falling as rain, if not already falling as rain, as milder air is starting to undercut from the west. Again, nothing ridiculously mild yet, but mild enough to give those temperatures in the day to around 4 or 5 degrees, and give a rise to the dew points to around 1 degree or so. So just bringing up those temperatures by a couple of degrees, turning all that precipitation back to rain. So we're starting to see the end of this cold spell here. Still got snow around, but more areas will be turning to rain over the course of the next 48 hours, before by Sunday evening pretty much everywhere, maybe except the far northern tips of Scotland over the higher ground, will have rain falling instead of anything wintry. Now, if I do put on the temperatures today, it is another bitterly cold day as I'm recording this just before 2 p.m. Look at those temperatures once again, widely around the freezing point to maybe 1 or 2 degrees, slightly milder towards coastal areas and further westwards, as well as that milder air is starting to move in. And you can see the coldest conditions are actually across parts of northern Scotland still really under that real bitterly cold air, but it is starting to retreat away into the North Sea and out back into the North Atlantic. So we'll have to see exactly what happens over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours, but it is going to be waning, and much milder air from the mid-Atlantic is going to be sweeping in. Now, if you have a look at the weather warnings, we do have a widespread ice warning for western coasts at the moment, for Wales and Northern England, again, just for the risk of wintry showers tonight into tomorrow, where those temperatures still drop below freezing. So showery rain and sleet with snow over some hills will lead to an ice risk tonight and possibly travel disruption. Again, surfaces are very cold at present, posing the possibility of ice in some areas. The likelihood of this perhaps increases in places by a wash-off of road grit or salt. So where you get a bit of rain or sleet that is quite heavy and washes away the salt, and then colder conditions are still there, and when that salt is washed away, any precipitation it falls will start to freeze with the absence of that salt. So we could sort of see those issues persist into the morning, but again, we'll have to see. Again, that's really only happening when we see heavier precipitation is able to wash that away. Above 200 to 300 metres, so sort of moderate hills, elevation, 200 to 300 metre elevation, some snowfall is likely with a few centimetres over some Transpennine routes. Again, high likelihood, lower end of the impact. And then we have an snow and ice warning for parts of Scotland from earlier today until to 9 p.m. tonight, and there was a amber warning issued within this earlier today, and again 10 to 20 centimetres above 200 metres, low-lying areas 1 to 3 centimetres, but I think that's turning back to rain now, and sort of to moderate hills maybe 5 to 10 centimetres in a few hours, and again icy surfaces. And there's another ice warning here tonight from 9 p.m. until 11 a.m. again for very similar conditions further southwards, but of course we've got more snow here, so the likelihood is increased as there's more precipitation around, and that snow could melt slightly before it refreezes tonight, or just generally compacts and freezes once again tonight, giving hazardous conditions. Into tomorrow we still have those yellow ice warnings, and into Sunday we have a widespread snow and ice warning for northern areas and ice warning for England and all of Wales. Now the thing with this is it is a transient snow event, what's coming on Sunday. So it is snow turning to rain, ice turning milder. So yes, there could be issues in the morning, especially maybe up until lunchtime, but a lot of areas around the mid-afternoon will have this risk decreasing significantly. So you have a look at the ice warning in the south, you can see it does expire at 2 p.m. So again, it really is waking up on Sunday morning is going to be the problems. And again, we've looked at the further details. Widespread frozen surfaces ahead of a band of rain, sleet and snow pushing northeast across the UK through Sunday. So if you are up early, most areas will be actually see some leading edge snowfall, maybe for an hour, maybe more. And again, could be a few centimetres into a few areas as the surface is still frozen, so it will readily settle. But that snow to low-lying areas will only last an hour or two before turning readily to rain. And there's no sort of if, buts or maybes there, it is turning to rain. The dew points and the surface temperatures will be way too mild. It's not even marginal. It is a big sweep of milder air. And then, of course, there could be 3 to 5 centimetres over slightly higher ground when we see slightly longer snowfall. It will melt rapidly, and that could bring briefly to the ice risk. But again, if the snow is starting to melt, I would doubt that it would start to refreeze. And then, of course, you could have issues with surface water flooding as well. Snow and ice warning further northwards, so actually putting the snow into that bit more, because there could be more widespread 1 to 3 centimetres of accumulations, maybe 5 to 10 centimetres over the higher ground, and 10 to 15 centimetres on some of the highest of the north of the central belt. Again, once rain becomes established, all lying snow will melt rapidly, and there could be more issues with that over the evening, as the rain could linger further northwards. And again, it's high impact and getting to moderate likelihood, so I wouldn't be surprised to see an amber warning issued there if that snow does linger, because of course, even though the snow will probably not last through Sunday evening, you could still see 10 to 15 centimetres in the daytime, and that could still cause big issues in places, at least for a few hours. So we'll have to see again how it does play out. Now, if we do go over to the UKV and have a look at what the precipitation and the temperature is doing over the course of the next 5 days, you can see that snow into Scotland at the moment, slowly moving away over the course of this evening. It's sort of disintegrating away and turning more showery, but still persisting. And you can see a lot of those showers into parts of Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland are mostly rain now, whereas England, Wales and Scotland still snow. Through tomorrow, that snow could come more extensively inland through areas in the north of England, maybe the Midlands, parts of Wales, but still more of these showers, especially further westwards and towards the coast, turning to rain. As we head through Saturday evening into Sunday, we see that weather front push in, hit the cold air, and could turn to snow initially. Again, all depends on the timings, whether we see this rain start to arrive earlier, how much the milder air does undercut it. So I wouldn't take these charts in terms of the precipitation types too literally. There could be a few hours of snow pretty much anywhere, and some accumulations. And regardless if no snow falls out of the sky, the surfaces will remain around freezing for at least an hour or two during the rain. So there will be ice around, probably frozen rain out there for a time. So do take care whenever this precipitation just starts. Regardless if it rains falling out of the sky, it will probably be icy at the surface for at least an hour or two before the real mild air does move in. But as I said, by the evening time, pretty much all of the precipitation is turning into rain, maybe apart from the far north of Scotland, where through the evening over the higher ground, a few hundred metres, still a bit of snow. But again, that's not too unusual for this time of year. Again, further southwards, big heavy batch of rain. So yes, it's been quite dry through this cold spell. Yes, some areas have seen some significant snow. But in terms of actual precipitation accumulations, we've had really very little. So this is going to be a lot of precipitation. There's going to be a bit of a change, really. And we're going to be seeing a lot of rain in places. So could be some flooding issues around with this in a few places. But just generally loads of heavy bouts of precipitation moving in from the west, keeping us very unsettled all the way into the middle of next week. But we've got to see what happens to our north, as we've got all these lows trying to come in from the south and sort of lining up on the jet stream. But all this time we have got cold air just off the map to our north that is trying to drift in from the north. As we'll see on the models, we're on the cusp of very cold air, but also on the cusp of very mild air as well. And so that temperature collision, that temperature contrast could bring heavy precipitation, and to the northern extent could bring cold and snow. To the southern extent could give mild, wet and windy conditions. If you look at the max temperatures, you can see today it is another bitterly cold day, widely around the freezing to 2 degree mark. So yeah, really, really cold. Time to turn milder in the west though. Parts of the Republic of Ireland, 4 or 5 degrees. Overnight tonight, still probably a widespread frost for central and eastern areas, but not as much, maybe -1 to -2, so nothing absolutely frigid, but still cold. Through Saturday afternoon, again, temperatures starting to rise, maybe 4 or 5 degrees as that air is starting to get moderated in from the west. So anyone in the southeast still with snowfall, starting to properly thaw probably by Saturday afternoon, and it will get all swept away by Sunday. As we move into Sunday, you see overnight still cold, so there could be an ice risk through Sunday morning, and then into Sunday around lunchtime you can see those temperatures rapidly rising. So for some areas at lunchtime on Sunday it could be 0 degrees, maybe 1 degree. We run to 6 p.m. Look at that, 2 to 4 degrees widely, and getting towards 10 degrees around 3 a.m. if not higher by the start of Monday. So doing much milder for Monday, 10 to 13 degrees widely. Overnight temperatures not dropping away at all. And then Tuesday, again, slightly colder, maybe 9 or 10 degrees, but still extremely mild compared to what we've had recently. And then slowly colder air could start to filter back in from the north. But as we'll see in the longer range models in a minute, there is huge uncertainty with that. So do have a look at the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next few weeks. You can see we're in sort of a stagnant pattern at the moment, where most areas are actually in quite a slack flow. So it's cold and dry. Still got those westerly winds and small low pressure system towards Scotland, which is producing those snow showers and persistent snow in places. But as we head into next week, we see the southwesterly winds push in. We still got blocking towards Greenland. That's why the possibility of cold air is still there. You look at next Thursday, and a northerly wind, a bitterly cold northerly wind is trying to come in. And as I said, big temperature contrast, -5 isotherm engulfing Scotland. But the 5 degree isotherm is into southwest England. So we've got sort of a 10 to 15 degree temperature contrast there in places. Really quite a big temperature contrast. And look at that, very cold air just to our north. Milder air just to our south. It's where that dividing line sets up. It's where we'll see big contrasts and potentially very heavy snow. Again, though, can't take this GFS run too literally because other runs have got this cold air much further southwards. Other runs have got the mild air engulfing the whole of the British Isles. As we head towards Christmas, we do see that cold air actually push in. And for Christmas Day, there's a big contrast through the Midlands and Northern England. I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of snow mixing in with that. So yeah, really interesting. And the -10 degree isotherm is into Scotland and Northern England. So huge temperature contrasts here. And again, you've always probably in these sort of situations got to think that that colder blocked air, denser air, could shift further southwards than the models are initially anticipating it will. So we've always got to have a look at that. And by the end of the run, we're in freezing cold conditions for Boxing Day and the 27th, with the -10 isotherm moving in. Under higher pressure, it would be absolutely freezing overnight. Beyond that, though, high pressure moves to our east, and it tries to pull an easterly wind in, or at least gets a Scandinavian high going, but we stay fairly westerly. So you can see from this GFS run, very much to the south, yeah, a bit of cold air at times, but mostly quite mild. But the general pattern is still quite blocked and still has the potential for cold, with very subtle shifts in the flow and the positioning of high pressure, low pressure. So yes, even though this GFS looks generally mild for London, on the ensemble chart it looks pretty mild, it is actually quite a cold and blocked run overall. Just positioning of that block means the cold air is just staying to our north and for parts of Scotland. Now, if we do go to the GEM, which does something completely different in terms of the actual outcome, it's very similar in terms of the blocking, but the outcome is very different. Now, you can see southwesterly winds, and the northerly wind wins out. That low pressure to our south and our west doesn't move in as quickly and doesn't really develop as much. By next Thursday, Friday, we're in a cold northerly wind. Nothing absolutely bitterly cold, but the -5 isoform moving in, and potentially, as we're towards Christmas, the -10 line is in. Lower pressure kind of come up from the south. Could see heavy snow. This is a cold, blocked tropospheric polar vortex sinking into Scandinavia and towards the UK. So we'd be very unsettled and wouldn't be surprised to be seeing significant snow around for some for the Christmas period. So GEM, very similar in terms of the pressure charts to the GFS, just developing those lows slightly less to our south and having that block to our north slightly stronger, just means all that colder air is shifted 500 miles further southwards, engulfing the whole of the British Isles. So this sort of pattern, that's why we're seeing such flip-flopping in the ensemble members. Like yesterday I said, the model was definitely trending colder. They flipped today, the ensemble members at least, and they're a lot milder. But as we see by this, very subtle shifts in the output of the pressure charts makes huge contrasts and huge differences in the upper air temperatures. That's why they're still scattered in the ensemble members, you cannot rule out any scenario with this. It's a very similar pattern to what we actually saw last Christmas, where we thought it was all going to go cold, and then the block to our north and our west just didn't quite develop as much, and that milder air was shifted a few hundred miles further northwards, and that cold air, that bitterly cold air was there, but it stayed in Scandinavia and never made its way much closer to the UK than Scotland. So that's why this sort of pattern, you've got to wait until a couple of days away. And of course, that pattern last year, it was only really decided about 3 or 4 days before Christmas. 5 days ahead, we were still thinking it was going cold. So we've got to see what happens. Anyone calling it at this stage, very much not looking at the model output, how there is very, very a fine tipping point here. If we look at the ECMWF, this is very much probably a contrasting one to the GEM, where you see the low pressure to our south does develop quite a bit more. The northerly wind tries to push in, but look at that low pressure. It runs in off the Atlantic and holds off the low pressure to our north. And for Christmas, you can see the north is very cold, but the south is very mild still. So again, similar to the GFS in terms of that we've got big temperature contrast, and the cold air is very close to our north, but still not quite pulling it in. And for most of England and Wales and the Republic of Ireland, we would be having a generally pretty average sort of Christmas period with quite a bit of rain around as well as low pressure is moving in. But Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England would be quite cold and probably would have snow around as well, with that freezing cold air moving in. Now, if we do have a look at the ensemble members, these are the latest GFS ensemble members for London. You'll see it generally has quite a mild output for the 20th to 26th. But as we saw on the operational charts, that GFS was 100, 200 miles at times away from being bitterly cold. But you see we've got the 5-degree isoform there. So yes, it's got ensemble support, but similar to how I said last winter did flip to mild conditions, this could easily flip back to cold conditions. Remember, this time yesterday, all these ensemble members around the 23rd, 24th were around the -5 area. So we could see this flip once again. So again, I wouldn't take these too literally. There is still a lot of spread around for the Christmas period and beyond the Christmas period, at which we dip more towards average for the last week of the month. And again, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out. If we look at the 2 meter temperatures, huge spread, some going really cold, some going really mild. And again, another big indication of this is look at the dew points, huge range in dew points. Some getting towards 10 degrees, including the operational run, others going towards -5, showing an Arctic air mass. Now, I do just want to compare this to Glasgow. If you look further northwards, look how the majority of runs are around the -5, if not lower. And you have to remember, Glasgow is about 400 miles to our north. So, that is a long way, of course, especially for us to travel. But in terms of the actual overall atmosphere, that's a very short distance, and things can shift by that error quite significantly within sort of a week, which is what we're looking at here. And of course, even if it doesn't shift 400 miles and shifts only 200 miles, that would bring in the Midlands and Northern England to snow. So we'll have to see exactly what happens. But I definitely wouldn't discount cold weather at this time, even though the onshore numbers are definitely looking milder, for London at least. The north definitely does look cold for the Christmas period, potentially snowy as well. Look at the new snow depth spikes for around the Christmas period, quite decent snow depth spikes. So yes, the north in Scotland, perhaps Northern England, Northern Ireland, quite a good chance here of seeing a cold, maybe a snowy Christmas period, and that cold and snowy weather could drift southwards, but we'll have to see what the models do. If you just finish by looking at the London ensemble numbers from the ECMWF, and you'll see it is pretty similar. Generally mild towards sort of the early period just before Christmas, trending more towards average for the period after Christmas, or Christmas Day at least. But you can see there is a lot of spread, so once again you can't discount any individual runs. I think again, compare it to Glasgow, you'll be able to see that Glasgow is quite a bit colder. Yes, the mean for Glasgow is a couple of degrees colder than it is for London, which is expected to be further northwards, but Glasgow is still a couple of degrees below average, instead of London being a couple of degrees above average, more towards the -5 line, and probably seeing a lot more winteriness there as well, with a lot of showers, so probably would be very snowy there as well. So you can see how it is all on a very tight little tipping point here. You know, we'll have to see what happens. If that cold air does flood to our south, the low pressure to our south is slightly weaker, the block to our north is slightly stronger, then we could be going very cold and potentially snow for the Christmas period. If that block is, as forecasted by some of the models at the moment, or by the GFS and the ECMWF, not the GEM, remember, if that block is slightly weaker, as it's being forecast at the moment, and the low pressure to our south is stronger, then yes, most likely scenario is mild weather in the south, cold weather in the north, with snow line somewhere through northern England or Scotland. Seeing wintry scenes, beautiful wintry scenes for Scotland, and mild sort of 7 or 8 degrees, wet and windy weather in the south. So we will have to see what happens, but given the amount of blocking we've had at the moment, I would not discount that blocking to our north being a bit stronger than the models are initially anticipating it to be. So we'll have to see, but anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Make sure you keep up to date with the models. Things will be changing very rapidly, very quickly, and could change at very short notice, so do keep an eye on them. Of course, keep an eye on the videos as well. But again, I'll see you again for another video soon.